Between the Years, a podcast where I try to explore my thoughts from an unbiased and nuanced perspective. Today's episode was formed after a conversation with a cyclist. Now, this cyclist, he was training for a race, and we began to talk about training and equipment and all things to do with the sport itself. But the idea that followed, which is something I've applied to my own life for quite a while, is train worse and perform better. And I don't mean worse as in train badly, but I mean train in the worst gear you can get, train in the harshest conditions, train in conditions that will make it a lot easier for when race day comes or fight day comes or whatever day it may be for your specific sport. And when I was talking to this man, he was telling me he was training for his race and he had all this expensive equipment on, and he said, I've got this shirt and short set that adds 0.4 milliseconds to my overall time, and I've got this pair of trainers that help my feet stick, but all this stuff, and I don't really understand how cycling gear works, so I couldn't comment too much. But I said to him, would it not be better to be able to do the same thing in the most basic clothes and a pair of Adidas trainers while you're training, to see if you can almost match your original times or beat them, so that the gear will add the value when it matters? Because expensive kit is a multiplier, but if you multiply nothing, then you still get nothing. Because if you're constantly training in the easiest conditions and you're constantly doing the easy things, or you're constantly stagnating, you're not moving the needle, you're not training as hard as you could be, because now you've just made what needs to be the easy day every day. Whereas if every training session became a little bit more difficult, or something was changed here, or something became harder to do here, or you decided to wear one shoe that day and see if you could still beat through the pain of the pedal to your foot. There's quite a strong example, but the little adjustments you make will make the race day, fight day, or whatever day you choose easier. And I thought about some examples. I've done this in my own, when I done amateur boxing, albeit only for a year, but I dedicated myself strongly to that craft over the course of that year. And then COVID hit, and then a few other things happened that just made it so that I didn't go back. I made it so I didn't go back, basically. When I started amateur boxing and I first started sparring, I realised that my mouth was filling up with so much spit, because I didn't start till I was 21, and my mouth would fill up with so much spit that every time I sparred, my gum shield would just fall out my mouth, or because I was breathing so heavy with so much spit, it would eventually just pop out each time. So every time I'd do a session, I'd wear my gum shield for the entire session, and it got my mouth used to wearing the gum shield. It got used to being there. So after 3 months, it would stay in during sparring sessions. It would feel natural to be there. I wasn't breathing so heavy with it in. I wasn't salivating so much with it in. And it was awkward, but it was a specific awkward thing that I'd done during training. And best as I can recollect, I was the only one who had a gum shield in for the entire training session. So it was that small, specific, awkward thing that helped me to not even get leverage over anyone else, because the majority of them have been training for so long, but almost get the leverage on myself. So now I was having better sparring sessions because I wasn't constantly trying to keep my gum shield in, or spit going everywhere, or anything to get in the way of that specific thing that was happening. And another one from when I was running, and I spoke to one of my friends. He served in the army, and he was telling me about how in the army you wake up and you have your breakfast, which is usually just a full English, and then they go make you train, and a lot of the lads would be throwing up and stitches would happen and things like that. And I thought to myself, perhaps I can incorporate that level of training to my own routine. So I had the bright idea that 3 days out of every 7, so it would be a Monday, a Wednesday and a Friday, I used to run 5 miles every morning from 5 a.m. I'd wake up at 4:30, 5 a.m. I'd go for a run, 5 miles every morning, and then 10k on a Saturday. And I thought to myself, why don't I try the same thing? So I would start off one day, then I'd do another day, then I'd do another day, and I'd eat a full English about 20 minutes before going on a 5-mile run. It was a pretty stupid idea. I never threw up though, but it certainly caused some stomach upsets and cramps. It was quite painful to endure, but it only really added between 3 to 5 minutes to each run, to each time. But then after doing it for about a month, and then not doing it for a little while, the time it added, or time it took off, was even better than the time it added on. Because all of a sudden now, my body's not having to adjust to run with this massive amount of food sat in its stomach, and I'm quicker, I'm better. And it depends as to what level you're trying to get to, I suppose. Because there are certain things as well in sports where you'll do naturally. So you won't wear 8-ounce gloves hitting the heavy bag, and the point of it is not to have lighter gloves on the bags or to protect your hands less or whatever. It's because if you're wearing heavier gloves when you're hitting the bag, or when you're in the gym, or when you're doing this, when you do come to fight night on the 8-ounce gloves or the 10-ounce gloves, your punches are quicker. Everything is quicker because you're so used to wearing 14 or 16-ounce gloves. And it's not just gym, it's not just sports that this whole idea or theory or way of life can be applied to. And Seneca told his students put yourself through voluntary hardships. And it's true, because voluntary hardships are what makes the real hardships that will get all of us more bearable, easier to handle, easier to deal with. Voluntary stress. One of my favourite uses of voluntary stress is saunas. Now, a sauna is great for recovery, but I also like to keep myself in that sauna past the point of where I'm just sweating to the point of where my heart is rapidly beating. I'm feeling seriously stressed out and I need to get out. I feel like I need to rip the walls down as soon as I can to release the heat from my body that is absolutely crippling at the time. But I genuinely believe in my mind that that level of voluntary stress helps and has helped me of times that have been stressful, times that have hit me and I've not expected it, like life does to all of us. And it's a way to stop you from throwing your toys out the pram, so to speak. As soon as a bad situation hits or something happens that you don't think is fair, or you think, oh, why is this happening to me? And you throw a bit of a tantrum, which is very childish, of course. We all know throwing tantrums is childish. You have to take responsibility for your actions, and you also have to make sure that you are readily able to deal with any hardship that comes your way. And that is why Seneca said voluntary hardships to his students, voluntary hardships. I do also feel like Seneca was a bit of a not a rough example, but because of the way he lived his life and had his life and the sort of controversy that surrounded him, it's the right message with the wrong messenger. But then he always said, I am not a shining example of how to live, but I tell people how I'd like to live. He was just a walking contradiction. But he spoke a lot of truth and a lot of good. He had very good ideas, very good thought patterns and processes. So every place of your life does need time for some sort of voluntary hardships or making conditions worse for yourself to make things easier. And it goes through every action and every course, because the voluntary hardships are what make the hardships that come for us a lot easier to deal with, and they will come for us. They will get us all eventually, and how we deal with them is down to us. And just like a gym, this can be trained like a muscle. You can train your ability to handle hard situations and stress through practice and repetition of voluntary stress and voluntary hardships. Take a day of the week where you're going to live rough. Doesn't mean to say that you have to go sleep on the streets, but only have a cold shower and only sleep with one pillow or no pillows or no quilt, or however it is that will do small training with small amounts of hardship that will build up through a day to make your resilience muscle better, your resilience towards every situation. Because the big question on the day of the fight, say, is not what was he wearing, but it's how did they do it? How did they make that look so easy? How did they make that look so much easier than the other person? And the truth is, it's what happens when there's no one watching. It's what happens when the lights are off. It's what the person is doing when They just have to do it for themselves. Bleed in the gym so you don't bleed in the ring. Make things harder to perform better. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.